I'm Alan Mays, I'm your presenter, and we will be going through some ways to edit Visio diagrams using our templates. The first thing I'd like to do is I would like to refresh how to load the stencils. And to do that, we start by going and visiting tekmarcontrols.com. Select the support tab. And then look for, did you know Tekmar has a stencil library? And at the bottom, you'll see that the stencil library download page is here. Click on that. Then you'll be taken to this design stencil page with the latest zip file. Please check the version here. Make sure that you get the latest version. Currently, April 2020 is our latest Visio version, zip file version. Click on that. It will ask you where to save the file. Please make note of where the file will be saved. Click on Save File and then OK. And it should start the download process. You can view that download process in most browsers up here. Okay. When it's finished, it will give you the stencil file and it will ask you to open that file. At this point in time, we will not open it. What I would like you to do is, depending on whether you're working on your network drive or your local drive, determine the best location for you to unzip that file. On a network drive, you may need to get your IT department to help you choose that location, but on local drives, usually it's in your own personal user account. It will end up in the user account downloads, but I do not recommend leaving it there. I actually create a directory on my drive. I have a data drive, so I put all my data there. Which I've called Visio, and then I have unzipped it into the Visio drive. So that unzips right here. I just put that from my download directory directly here, unzip that, and it creates the stencils, templates, and toolbars folder. Once you've unzipped that, then you may close your browser and open Visio. And the first thing that you want to do is you want to go to File, scroll down to Options. This will open the Visio Options dialog. Click on Advanced. Scroll down the Advanced dialog to File Locations. And in this, particularly this, templates and stencils, use the Browse button to find where you have saved your Visio source templates, and do the same with your stencil. Okay, I put it in 3 times, but I'll just take that out of there. Once you have the Visio templates and the Visio stencils set up, say OK. Next thing to do is to go to your quick access toolbar. You wish to import the customization file. You find that in the same directory or the same folder as you did with your Visio folders. So Visio, toolbars, and then Tekmar exported UI. Click on that and open it. Once it's open, you can say OK, and you will have the Visio. To start a new drawing, select your template. Your template should come up under the new templates. If you do not see this, look for more templates. Select categories. And you should see a generic template 11 by 17 and a generic template 8.5 by 11. Most of the time you will be working with the template that proves the best drawing size for you. So we'll start today with just the 8.5 by 11. Going to drop that for a moment, and you will see an empty template with no drawings. But what you should see on the left-hand side is you should see your shapes files. All right, if you do not see your shapes files, then look for more shapes, and you can actually open a stencil, which will give you a browser that can be navigated to the location where that stencil folder is. But if you set it up correctly, that should come up automatically. I'd like to talk a little bit about the user interface for a moment. There are some things to understand. The first thing is that this is your menu bar, and your menu bar allows you to select certain ribbons within the menu. This is considered a ribbon, and on the ribbon there are various tools. So by stepping through the various menus, you'll see you get different ribbons with different tools. I strongly recommend that you become familiar with the ribbons and the tools, because you may be referring back and forth to them frequently when you're doing drawings. However, with the quick access toolbar, mine is slightly modified compared to the generic tekmar custom toolbar. You'll have all of your needed tools that are used most commonly for drawings and editing drawings right here. You can change the position of your toolbar. You can show it above the ribbon, such as this, or some people prefer below the ribbon. It still gives you access to all these quick tools to be able to use. Grid lines are set up and under the view menu. And what you want to do is you want to make sure that your grid is checked. And you can set various sizes of grid by clicking that little down button there and choosing the type of subdivisions you want for your grid and your rulers. Generally, you'll leave them default. They will space themselves as you zoom in and out of the grid or out of the view, so you do not need to adjust them. The important part is that you are using the grid and also the guides. The guides are important to keep things in alignment. Once you've turned your grids and guides on, you can go to your visual aids, and when you start Visio, it will start with the snap to and glue tos that are shown here. I strongly recommend that you turn off the vertices, the intersections, and the geometries, as what tends to happen is you will get snapping to little parts within a diagram that you may not want, and it just ends up causing a lot of frustration. Typically, when I start a Visio drawing, I will turn those off. I will even turn ruler subdivisions off as I use grid and guides to do my actual snap to and glue to. And I will also turn off the connection points because Tekmar does not use connection points at this point in time. Once you've set your grids up the way that you want your snap and glue to visual aids, say okay, and then you can actually draw things that will line up with grids. Or guides. Okay. Every shape that you use has a set of handles. And by using the pointer tool, which should be on your quick access tool, you can select one of these tools or one of these handles. You'll notice that the cursor changes from a pointer to a cross. That tells you you are actually over the handle, and then you can move the handle to change the direction of your line. Also, you can notice if you hover over that line, your mouse changes, your cursor changes again, and now you can move in that direction as well. So you'll get used to using those movement tools, and because they will become important when you're editing our documents or generic templates, standard applications. Selecting is done with hovering over the item and clicking the left mouse. And if you want to delete something, you can press the delete on the keyboard. So I'm hovering over the shape and then pressing the left mouse and then deleting. A very handy control is Control Z. It undoes the last set of actions you did, and Control Y repeats those last set of actions. So when you're dealing with your sheet here, anytime you drop an object onto a sheet, in the event that you need a bigger sheet, you can simply just drag over to the next sheet and start that process once again. You'll notice that the sheet automatically fills out. And you can extend that sheet to up to 8 pages. Currently my display is only showing 4 pages, but you can do that again and again. You can make a very extensive program or drawing this way. Probably don't really require it in most of the things that you'll be doing. Typically we find 1 or 2 pages will do the job. Maybe on an 8.5 by 11, it's a little bit different, but then I would recommend that if you're going to get multiple 8.5 by 11 pages, you actually use 11 by 17 generic. Once again, Control Z takes that away, and you're back to where you started from. Grids can be moved by using the visual tool, Show Grids. You can change that as I pointed out earlier. We've got a selection of different types of grids that you can use. You notice the grid is much larger now. But to move guidelines, you actually hover over the guideline and then move it to its new location. So if you notice that you'll the cursor changes there from a pointer to an up and down arrow, that indicates that you can now move that guideline up or down. And once again, Control Z undoes the last. You can add guidelines. Some people will add guidelines for other purposes. We found that typically 2 is good. You do that by going to the top ruler. Notice once again the change in the cursor there, and then dropping your guideline down. Control Z takes it away. That will give you horizontal guidelines coming from the horizontal ruler, and you can also do vertical guidelines by coming from the vertical. It does make it very quick to set up pages and put them into sections. Can make a diagram much neater, or a drawing much neater. Typically, we find the horizontal guides are probably all that you really need. Let's take a look now at a drawing. We're going to take a look at one of our standard application drawings. I'm not going to save this. So the first thing I recommend, that if you're going to do anything with our generic templates, this is a standard tekmar template, but if you're going to do anything with your generic templates that we use, or standard applications, please save them with a different file name before you use them and before you start working with them. That way, if there is extensive undos, you can simply just go back to the beginning by reloading the template or the standard application and starting again. If you notice that on this particular diagram that there's a page to the left, when you do a copy and a paste, so you select, I'm holding the left mouse while I'm dragging the selection tool, the pointer tool. I've got my left mouse there and I'm dragging that selection box over the entire thing. If I was to copy this and simply paste it without a location, Visio, to me, this is a bug, Visio will drop it somewhere left or right of where you're working. So we can highlight this entire mistake here. And again, I'm using the, while I'm moving the mouse, I click the left button, drag it to the limits of where I want to select, and release that mouse button, and everything is now highlighted. And if I press the delete key, you'll notice now that not only are the extra pages gone, but all that extra diagram is gone. Now, this is why it's important to save that file with a different name before you start working here, because you can get pretty deep, and Visio does limit the number of undos and redos in a page. You can change that under your options, and some of you may want a deeper undo list than others, but the best thing is to save frequently. There's also one other thing I would like to quickly show, as this has come up recently, is that under the options and save, I always put save auto recovery information on. 10 minutes is not a bad time if you're working on a laptop. 10 minutes is probably pretty good. With a network drive, you may want to go a little longer, and you can go shorter. Just use the up or down button, or as with any of these boxes, you can physically highlight the whole thing and just set a value completely. So let's talk about a few of the tools that we can use. I like to call tekmar the group happy company. When you often find many of our shapes, they'll be grouped. And sometimes that grouping makes it a little bit difficult. So this one I've ungrouped once before, but basically if you want to group something, you can right click and then select group. And what you'll find is when you click a group that you'll get the outline of the entire group. Now this makes it difficult to work within that group. So if you are going to edit and you find you've got a big group like this, simply just ungroup that group. And then you can work with the individual items within the group. If you look very carefully, and I'm going to use my control key and my mouse wheel, I can zoom in. I generally do not ungroup the control. I'll leave that alone. Don't need to ungroup that, because what you can do is you can move that around like this, and it keeps the label with the shape. And of course, undo does it. You'll also notice that if you're not grouped, you can select things independently. This line, for example, is now selected. Again, left click when you're over it, hovering over. Cursor changes, right click, selects it. So let's talk about a few of the very handy operations. These are ones that I include in my toolbar because I use these quite frequently. One is called the join, and the other one is called the trim. And these are handy for several reasons. If you look carefully at this diagram, you'll see that there is a junction point on the two lines where there is no crossing junction like there is down here. If you remove that dot and inspect closer, that's again the control and then the wheel mouse rolling the wheel mouse up, you'll see that these two lines don't really join together. But if you click the first line, you'll see the handle appear. And then you press the shift key and click the second line. Now you'll see that there's a bigger selection here. Backing out, you can see now that this entire L has been selected. Select the join tool, and it makes it one solid line. So by zooming in, you can see now that we have those two lines joined, and they're making one shape rather than two. This reduces the size of a file significantly. And I would get into the practice of when you do trims and joins, that you get into the habit of doing that, because it does make one shape with two endpoints rather than two shapes with two endpoints. And that makes a difference over time. Okay, so again, join, and then you see that now these are a single shape rather than two shapes. A couple more. That's my join tool, and you find join if you don't have it on your toolbar by going Developer, Operations, Join. That's exactly the same way as if you would on the toolbar. Just go over a little bit of a point here. You can add things to a toolbar, the quick access toolbar, simply by selecting what you're looking for, then right click and add to the quick access toolbar. This is the inverse of that, is to right click on one of the existing quick access, and then you can remove that. So I'll remove the trim temporarily. Now I want the trim back. I can go there And I can add it back, and there it's back on the quick access toolbar. So true, and join and trim only work when you select multiple objects. You can't join an object that has nothing to join to, and you can't trim anything to anything when you don't have a trim selection group. Well, let's talk about trim a little bit. I find this a very handy feature. It does have a little bit of a weird behavior, which I haven't been able to figure out how to work around, but if you're going to trim a series of lines, for example, when you put a line in, I'm going to choose a different style on this. I'm going to call it a normal style. Then I'm going to select, it's already highlighted because I just drew it in. I'm going to select a series of other lines here using the Shift key again. I'm going to press the trim button. And the first thing you notice is that all the lines formats have gone away. But what's more importantly is if you start deleting things, you've actually trimmed the system up very well. I'm just going to move this over to here. And if you use that was a mouse action, or that was a keyboard action of up and down. If you use the trim button or the format painter button, which is this little paintbrush, you can bring those formats back pretty quick. Make sure you do just select the line that you're working with, though. It has some odd behaviors as well. So, pointer, as I showed. Okay, time not to panic. Control Z undoes the last action. And there's your format back. You can see these lines were not joined. They're different lines, so they didn't get involved in the pickup. Okay. In fact, that one's been trimmed several times. Well, that's where your join function comes in. And you just join those back, and now you've got one solid line again. And it's kept its format, but just to make sure, you can format it again. Now everything is nicely formatted up there for that one. And we'll do this one. Join that. And then we'll format it so it's the same format. Let's keep clicking. That's the problem with join, or with grouping, I should say. Notice it took several clicks to get down to where I was trying to get into. Choose the paintbrush, and we're starting to get back that nice format again for these things. Join. And format. Join. And format. Adding things to a diagram is pretty simple. So we'll add a new electrical shape. This is the electrical diagram. Do not mix your mechanicals and your electricals. Keep the mechanical shapes which are found in the mechanical stencil, master shapes file, and then keep your electricals based upon the type of electrical you're doing, junctions, things that are common, not tekmar basic, not tekmar product, but basic products. This one always confused me a little bit. I got to fix that up, but that's a different story. And if you look here, you'll see that anything that has a product number starting with 0 is in this set of templates or this set of shapes. The 1 series set point boiler controls. And so on. House controls, thermostats, snow melts. So that's a brief overview of how to edit and open stencils and save stencils. A little bit of work with the various tools that were within Visio. Strongly recommend. There are lots of YouTube videos out there. There's LinkedIn Learning. Most of the most important stuff with any of a drawing tool is to practice and try to watch videos. Become familiar with keyboards and the keyboard shortcuts because they do help in the long run. Thank you for participating, and looking forward to talking to you at other times on various other tekmar subjects. Thank you.
Do you have any, like I know I like to use a lot of the different line colors that you have on all the stencils. I ended up making my own little template just with different lines and colors and stuff like that. Is there any recommendations? Like, is there a way in Visio where you can actually auto connect? Like, does anybody actually use any of the auto connects? I've never used auto connects doing my drawings, but I don't know if anyone else on this platform has used those. Is that, do you know what I'm talking about? Where you can just click 2 points and it brings the wire?
Yeah, that's called Smart Shapes in Visio now. Okay, and it works reasonably well. Sometimes it's too smart for its own good, and if you're not careful, you'll actually lay down multiple items that you may not want to be connected. Unfortunately, we have not incorporated Smart Shapes into our templates, so they themselves will not function with that Smart Shape Auto Connect feature. The other thing that we do not do, which I'm going to be making changes to the templates, is we do not let you use, it's not that we don't let you use connectors, but we make it very difficult to use connectors, far more difficult than it's needed. So if you tried to put a connector, it's not going to work. But if you do try to connect with another shape that does have connection points on it, then it will work. And you can feel free to change these shapes within your stencil. But if you do, give them a different name so you don't accidentally overwrite them, because it becomes a real bear having to go backward and fix things up from scratch rather than starting from the beginning, okay? So certainly you're welcome to, once you download those, There's nothing tying you to not experimenting and making them smart shapes if you want.
Hey, Alan, can you show adding a page to that schematic? I know we talked a couple weeks ago about you adding a page. Like, can I just see how it works in your version there? Because I have an older version. So you were saying that when you add shapes on that and you extend them over to your right-hand side, can I just see how that works and what it looks like? Just so I
Sure.
can convince my boss to get a new version, that's all.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. Visio, like I said, has come a long way since I started back in 1990s. Basically, all you need to do is drop a shape. And anytime you drop a shape, it automatically adds the next page. What you'll see here is you'll see there's a divider line. That's the actual edge of the page. So this is still an 8.5 by 11 page, and if you printed it that way, it would come out as 8.5 by 11, but they're all connected. So sometimes that's good, sometimes that's not good. When I had started with any drawing program back in the early days of computers, we often put connectors that would show that this was leaving a page to come in and entering on another page. And what that did was it prevented a lot of confusion. But with us, what we can do is we can just run across here. And if you actually looked at it, it would, in a printer, maybe I can do a print preview. You'll see that there's your break between your pages. So I prefer to have an off page and an on page connector to show where they're leaving and where they're entering. And typically the off page, on page connectors that were used back were little triangles. They were sort of like a trapezoid with a square end and a pointed end, and you just put them to where you needed them to show on and off pages. We don't include those, something that I'm thinking seriously about doing again. Generally, if you're going to do a larger page like this with multiple 8.5 by 11s, I recommend that you go to a generic template of 11 by 17. Start off with giving yourself lots of room in your shapes, and then as you finesse your drawing and you get things where you want them, you can start reducing the spacing between the shapes, and you can still end up with a pretty neat diagram. And as you can see, it goes away. So I don't quite follow what you were trying to tell me with yours. I would have liked to have been able to share your screen and see what you're actually talking about, Todd. So perhaps we could take that offline if you really wanted to. And I asked Charlotte, and she said no.
Yeah, that's great. No problem. Yeah, ours just doesn't, I guess maybe it's the version. We just have to add a page. So we have to go up to page setup and basically change the page length and dimension to get that second page. But it's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. We'll get through it.
Yeah. Our template, though, as you can see, if you're using anything after about 2013, you can see that it does it automatically for you. And it doesn't matter what shape. It really doesn't. You can even make copies of shapes.
Is it, it's not scaled at all though, is it? Like if you wanted to provide this for like, maybe you wanted to make a panel, like a guy wanted to make a panel of the controls. Is there a way to set it up so that you could print this and email it to them so our templates are sort of to scale, or is that anyone been asked for that? I've never really been asked for that, but it's just a general question I've had in the back of my head.
Yeah, well, actually, I do use Visio to make scaled drawings. Let me just see here if I've got one. I don't know if I've got much of a... It's one of the ones I've been playing with. Is this was going to work out to be it's a little math problem I was working on. But you can actually put a scale that is related to an engineering or architectural scale, and it's under design, page setup, and then drawing scale. And you've got a series of scales that you can use here. So for all our Canadian friends, of course, we're in metric, but you can also choose architectural, and it'll give you like 3/32 of an inch is 1 foot, or whatever scale you want. Then it also tells you how big your drawing becomes when you do that. So you'll know now that your limits for your drawing are 23 feet, almost 4.5, a little over 4.5 inches by 16 3/8 of an inch or so. I often use this when I'm doing landscaping and little projects around the house. I'll actually draw them up on Visio. So yeah, you can do it.
Cool. Thanks, Alan.
Okay, Alan, unless you've got anything else, I think that's probably going to cover it all for this presentation.
Well, thank you very much for joining me. I hope I was informative and that I'd helped you determine how to download and set up those templates so that you can use them. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. We're always willing to help you, and anybody at Tekmar can actually answer questions on Visio now. Have a good day.